Hello there. My name is Clara Smith. Welcome to another poetry deep dive today. I love Denis Martindale. He has written over 3,700 poems for the Poem Hunter website. That level of dedication, it gives us some incredible context for the sheer volume of life experience he brings to the table for this piece. Section 1. A Poetry Deep Dive. July 5th, 2026. Denis Martindale has written a new bird poem, and the title is The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Pigeon. Here is what the brand new poem's message shares with us today. Section 2. The Solitary Rooftop Pigeon. A Mundane Beginning. So the poem actually opens up with a scene I think we can all instantly relate to. The poet is just standing at his front door, once again, right? He's expecting a few parcel deliveries, so he's doing that familiar waiting and checking routine, but nothing's there. And as he's just kind of gazing up at these sparsely packed white clouds rolling gently by to his left, he spots just one single pigeon on the neighbor's roof. And he's actually pretty surprised to see it just sitting there, completely alone and almost motionless. He notes that both of its legs were showing, and it was just utterly silent. It's such a brilliant way to illustrate that sudden mental shift, going from a super mundane wait for a package to this really quiet, focused moment of observation. He just starts wondering just how lonely this little bird must feel today. Now let's track the exact sequence of events he observes here. First, the bird is perched motionless. Minutes go by, and it's still there, not moving a muscle, until it grows so visibly tired that it actually rests its body right down on the hot roof. The poet realizes, obviously, it really can't stay long in a spot sweltering like that. Then, finally, the silence breaks. It begins cooing in distress before it eventually vanishes and is flown away. Section 3. A Cry from the Heart. The Meaning of the Coo. This brings us to the real turning point of the entire poem. So that silence is broken by those distinct sounds. Coo, 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 coo. But listen to how the poet interprets this. He hears it as, I'm so lonely, I'm so lonely. For the very first time, he tells us, this bird's cooing wasn't your typical joyful, upbeat sound of nature. Not at all. It was a somber cry from the heart. It represents this really profound, extreme isolation in the animal kingdom, which is totally emphasized by the fact that absolutely no other pigeon appeared to join this solitary bird. But well, life interrupts even our deepest moments of observation, right? The poet steps away for a quick, simple coffee break. And when he comes back to the front door, coffee in hand, he finds an empty roof. It was no wonder the tired little bird had flown away. It just couldn't bear the heat of that roof any longer. It's gone, perhaps never to be seen again. It's just a fleeting encounter for sure, but one that leaves a really lasting impression on the poet's mind. Section 4. The Human Parallel, the Hidden Isolation. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how the poet uses this to mirror our own neighborhoods. He doesn't just leave us hanging with a sad story about a bird. He uses it as a lens. So on one side, you have the animal kingdom, this solitary pigeon resting on a hot roof, crying out for companionship and finding absolutely none. And then on the other side, human society. He draws this explicit comparison between that extreme loneliness in nature and people who literally just pack up, sell their houses, move elsewhere, and start all over again. Sometimes this happens after years, maybe even decades of living in the exact same spot, and yet they leave without encountering a single friend to wish them well. Not even one. It's honestly a devastating parallel about moving through life completely unnoticed. And that brings us to this beautiful, kind of haunting phrase right at the end of the poem. Among us, the lonely. Here we are unpacking the hidden isolation that exists right inside our own human communities. These folks aren't stranded on some deserted island. They are quite literally among us. Just like that pigeon was right there on the neighbor's roof, completely in plain sight and yet entirely alone. Which naturally leads us to a final, pretty provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. Have you ever felt like the long-distance pigeon? Or maybe have you ever lived next door to one without even realizing it? I think it's a really powerful reminder to just look a bit closer at the ordinary, everyday scenes in our lives. And hey, maybe check in on those who seem completely alone and motionless in our own neighborhoods. Thank you so much for exploring this brilliant poem with me. Keep your eyes open and your hearts kind.